Hello. So, I know that we've all seen the Path of Titans Pounce update trailer now. And yes, I am very excited for it, of course. So, what I thought I would do is I would collect data on all of the current quests on Gondwa for solo players and kind of just share them. Because we all know that we don't want to be in the new update with not enough marks to get the abilities that we want, and then have to go grinding for marks, which I know we all hate. So, before I actually give you the information on the zones for which quests are in each zone, I'm going to go over a little quirk of this game in terms of the questing system.
Number 19, Mouse and Baked Beans.
And that quirk is that different dinos have a different multiplier for how many marks they gain from quests. Please try not to pay mind to the hypersonic stego that you are watching in the gameplay footage. I brought us into single player to show the testing. But then again, who am I to stop you?
What's happening here?
So, as I said, different dinos have different multipliers for how many marks they gain from quests. A good way to test this is with a delivery quest. As you saw that I get 10 marks per one delivery. This is the lowest amount of marks that you can get from delivering a flower to this tree, so this is going to be the base standard, so 1 times. And I say this as a comparison to something like Sako, which gets the most amount of marks that you can get from quests. A good way to check here, again, is deliver a flower, in which you will see right here, the Sako ended up getting 12 marks from 1 flower delivery. That means that Sako ends up getting a 1.2 times multiplier for mark gain, or gets 20% more marks from quests than the base standard. And now here's where we meet in the middle for the most amount of marks and the least amount of marks you can get from quests. Same test as usual, grab a flower, bring it to the tree, and how many marks do we get? 11 marks. So what that means is that Alberta gets 10% more marks or a 1.1 times multiplier on mark gain from quests. The conditions of knowing which dino gets what multiplier is unknown. I have no idea because Thalassodromius gets the base standard, Patchy gets the base standard, but Alberta somehow gets more than a stego. It makes sense that Sako and things like Spino and Rex would get a good multiplier for marks, mainly because they're just slow creatures all in all, and they don't get, a good chance to get a lot of marks very fast. But yeah, there's the multipliers. And now to look at how quest items spawn. All quest items have a condition in which they will only spawn around certain things. Learning these conditions for the different quest items will help you, instead of memorizing the exact location of every single quest item, will instead allow you to just scan areas that you have never been in before to make it easier to quest in those areas. And let's start off with an easy one. Flowers and button mushrooms. Pretty much wherever there is grass and a zone that requires flowers and button mushrooms, you will find flowers and button mushrooms. Just look for grass and there they are. The exception to this rule is usually the red flowers that you find next to pathways in a lot of zones where, there's not only just one type of flower. These red ginger flowers will always spawn next to pathways. And next up is pine cones. Pine cones are kind of a generalized spawn. They kind of just spawn under any tree in any zone that requires you to collect pine cones. Sometimes they can be quite sneaky, as you can see right there. I almost just ran right past it without even seeing it. But either way, it's under a tree and it's near a path, so I think that is the condition, is next to paths and under trees. And next up we have clams and turtle shells. Clams and turtle shells are quite an easy one. They will just spawn along the shoreline in any zone that actually requests them, or the riverbanks as well, but usually a lot of the time they will spawn alongside, beach debris or stuff like that, as you can see right here. All these logs and rocks and dead trees or whatever that are washed up on the shore, all the clams and turtle shells tend to wash up with it, and that's usually where you'll find them. Next up is rocks. Any zone that requires you to gather rocks, you just look for, a large pile of rocks. That's all you do. Quite a self-explanatory one, I must say. And next up is branches. Branches have quite the variety in terms of their spawn condition. They can spawn next to pretty much dead trees that have fallen over, trees that are still standing but I assume are still dead, if you know what I mean here. Trees that have basically, been stripped or lost all their leaves, like this, right here. And lastly, these trees that, are pretty much still alive, but, they have no leaves on them. They can spawn under those too. If you check for any and all of these conditions in any of the zones that require branches, you should be fine. Okay, next up, bloodstones. Bloodstones, they tend to just like to stay near walls, I guess. Any stone wall in any zone that requires them. Usually nestled in any nook or cranny that they can fit into. A bit more generalized than others, I guess. And next up we have tiger nuts. Tiger nuts are quite an easy one. They just spawn around these bushes that you can see right here. Usually under them or, right next to them a lot of the time. That condition is quite consistent across, the few zones that have tiger nuts. In which they were, around those shrubs, but it was just a lot harder to find them. They're just kind of rare here. I think they just spawn closer to the path in Green Hills. Or the pathways, Anyway, next one. And here we have milkcaps. Milkcaps are a little bit weird. Mainly because they're not that consistent with their spawns. A lot of the time you can find them within clusters of trees and bushes. Or next to more, like broken trees, I guess. You can see the stumps there and half-cut trees. And then again in Green Hills again, it's, they're kind of just all around the bushes, but they're also near the path, so that might also be another condition that could help you with finding the spawns. You find a path. I don't think I need to explain insects. Acorns are quite an easy one. They kind of just spawn near these, fallen trees right here. You look for these little trees and you'll usually find piles of acorns around them. Titan's Pass is the only zone that has an acorn quest, so have a look in the top right and check where on the map I am, and you can check this spot as well. Easy acorn quest. And next up is Russulas. Usually you will always just find Russulas, or Russulas, however you want to say them, I don't care. Either way, you'll find them around, clusters of these, birch trees, and birch woods is the only zone in the game with Russula quests right now, so take advantage of that. And now for Amanita mushrooms. Pretty much just check under any rock formation that provides shelter. Amanita mushrooms tend to love the shade. And the next one here, we have bones. Bones are kind of easy. They tend to just spawn near rock formations. You know how dinosaurs like to back themselves up against rocks on every dinosaur movie, so why not? Sometimes they can spawn like next to rock piles too, as an example in Burnt Forest, but still. Rock, stone, inorganic matter. They died there, blah blah blah. And now for death caps. Obviously, they just spawn around dead trees. For wherever there are death caps, there are also a lot of dead trees. Learning the condition for the death cap spawn makes completing this quest very, very easy in the future. And up next we have Starfish. There is only really one zone in the game that has a quest for Starfish that non-aquatics can do, and that's mudflats. They usually spawn in shallow pools, and they're usually the only thing that you can see, and so they're easy to do. And now for Succulents. In savanna grassland, they kind of just spread out everywhere, in the grassland. Outside of savanna, though, they tend to have more of a we're going to plant ourselves in a dry area around rocks and shrubs. Let's just say on the brown, dry ground, you're going to pretty easily see these very, very green succulents. Unless it's the small ones hidden in a bush, then good luck. Salt rocks are a little bit weird, as there's a lot of salt rocks on the map, but there's not many zones that have salt rocks on them. So for salt flats, I guess they're on the edges of the salt flat, yeah. In green hills, they're on the browned out parts of the humps, yeah. And then in hot springs, they are just on the edges of the pools and kind of spread throughout there. Just look along the pools and you will find them very, very easily. Anyway, next one. And of course, I haven't forgotten about all you aquatics out there. So, lake sponges are kind of easy. They do just spawn anywhere on any type of rock for any zone that has lake sponges in them. And by rock, I mean stone formation, like this island here in the middle of Big Quill Lake. Sometimes they can spawn, a little away from a rock, but hey, it's still right next to a rock, what can you say? Unless you're talking about mudflats or Ripple Beach, in which they are the only zones in the game that allow non-aquatics to do a lake sponge quest. So, the lake sponge spawns among the vegetation there. Okay, now on to lakeweed. Lakeweed is actually quite an easy one, as you can pretty much find lakeweed in any fresh water source on the edge, next to the shore, in any zone that requires you to collect lakeweed. And despite it being called lakeweed, it doesn't mean it can only be in a lake. It can be in a small pond like the crater. No idea how lakeweed gets here, but yeah, there it is. Or you can find it even in a river. So long as the water is fresh and drinkable and won't kill you from drinking it, you should find lakeweed there, if the zone requests it. And now that we have all of that out of the way, and now you should know what to look for in terms of making questing easier to find the items, let us now move on to the part that most people have been waiting for. Knowing all the quests in each zone. That's what most people, I'm guessing, came for, right? Also, how the hell did this happen? Well, I actually do know how it happened. Basically, I just made my Thalassodromius way too fast, and now I am outside of the skybox. So in other words, I have escaped the map. I have escaped Gondwa. Now, for this, I would recommend pausing on any of the ones that you are interested in knowing, as they will only be up for 5 seconds, each of them. So, take your time. The video's not going anywhere. What? Did you think there would be ocean quests as well? How about no? So, as I said at the beginning of the video, this is pretty much just a video to help people who want to prepare for the next update, because no one wants to be in a new update and then have to grind for a bunch of marks before they can get the new abilities, the shiny new abilities. If this does help someone, like a newer player or a solo player, that's awesome. Mainly because they're able to quest in areas and learn those areas faster and avoid the hotspots while also keeping up their mark grind. And with all that out of the way, I hope you all enjoyed. Bye!